So my book is about social networks and how they can be used to make lives better. We talk about how things flow in networks. Everything flows in networks. Health effects, emotions, political behavior, how much money you make, whether or not you meet your spouse is affected by social networks. And we also talk in the book about how you can make things better using these networks. So just for example, you could just, if you wanted to protect people from H1N1, you could just go into the population and start vaccinating people at random. Well, there have been some researchers who have shown that if instead of doing that, you choose people at random and ask them to name a friend. And instead of vaccinating the person that you talk to at first, you vaccinate their friend. If you do that, you can get the same level of protection for the population at 1/3 the cost.
Oh my gosh.
Because those people who are named as a friend tend to be more central in the social network. Right? And so they're like the hubs, and if you can get to them and you vaccinate them, then you're able to stop the pathogen dead in its tracks.
I mean, because then you're going to go get it, or that friend of the friend is going to go get it.
That's
you don't
right.
have to pay for it anymore.
That's right.
Oh, interesting.
That's right. And so that's just one example.
Now, is Facebook and all those different things critical to our life nowadays, or can we just go by the old school way of just picking up a phone and saying hi?
Right, so one of the points that we make in the book is that these social networks have been with us for hundreds of thousands of years. So we have these natural social networks. And you can't really understand what's going on with Facebook and Twitter until you understand what's going on in these natural networks. So just for example, the average person, at the time we wrote the book, it's more now, but the average person on Facebook has 110 friends. These are Facebook friends. Whereas in real life, when you ask people to name their close friends, they only name about 5 or 6. Right? So there's a disconnect there.
Right.
And I think that social marketers, for example, they think that because you have 110 friends now, that you can influence a person by getting to any one of those people.
Right.
And in our research that we're starting to do with Facebook, we actually show that those people are not influential.
Right.
We have to look at a subset of those people that are likely to have real social network connections with those people.
So it goes back to the old way of your 5 or 6 friends.
That's exactly right. So on Facebook, what we do is we look at the people who upload photos of each other. Right? So just like now, Tom and I are in the same place, right? Because he's taking a picture of me. That suggests that we have a real world social connection. In fact, we've met a few times where I would say we're friends now, right?
Right.
There's not everyone I'm connected to on Facebook do I have the same kind of relationship with. But as a result, Tom and I are much more likely to be influential to each other than one of these other people that I only know online. And so we show that, just for example, that smiling profile pictures are connected on Facebook. So if you're smiling in your profile picture and you're my picture friend, I'm more likely to have a smiling profile picture. And in fact, there is the same kind of pattern among smiling profile pictures in Facebook as we find them in happiness in the Framingham Heart Study. And so it extends out to 3 degrees of separation. So if your picture friend on Facebook is smiling, then you are also more likely to be smiling yourself in your profile picture. And so we've also looked at the spread of tastes on Facebook.
Okay.
And so the spread of movie tastes, tastes in books, and tastes in music. And we find that some things spread and some things don't. But nothing spreads between Facebook friends. It only spreads between these picture friends. And so
not between Facebook friends, but between
these picture friends, these 5 or 6 people that on average that you tend to upload pictures of. Right? It's not the same group. There's obviously some things you worry about. So there's some people who just take more pictures. Right? So I'm sure that you've uploaded more pictures of people than the average person.
Are you guys all big on Facebook? Are you a Facebooker?
I'm on Facebook, but
I never check the thing.
Well, my friends give me a bad time when I see them and I'm left out of a conversation, and they say, well, if you get on your Facebook page once in a while, then you would have known about that.
I just get on Facebook now to creep on my kids. What are they doing?
So, James, what happens when a network goes sour, when bad things start propagating through the network?
Well, clearly bad things do propagate, right? So diseases is a good example, right? So and we talk about sexually transmitted diseases in the book, and we have this story about this very affluent suburb of Atlanta that had a syphilis epidemic outbreak. And because you had this, it wasn't because of anything particular medically that was going on in the community. What you had a change in social norms among a very small group of highly connected teenagers that suddenly thought it was okay to have group sex. And so you got this core of people that were bringing everyone into the network, and suddenly you had this outbreak in a community not that different from Rancho Santa Fe. And can you imagine if there was a syphilis epidemic in Rancho Santa Fe, it would totally make the news, certainly here in San Diego, right? Right,
wow.
and so there was this change in norms, and because they understood that this was a social network effect, all they had to do was go in and break up some of these friendships at the core of the network, and they were able to get the epidemic under control. So bad things do spread in networks.
Even though still it's about your 5 or 6 friends. Even though they're on this Facebook networking thing, it's the core 5 or 6 are the ones that are influential. And
right. So far that's what we found, but there are new forms of organization online that are fundamentally different. And so any kind of social network that we can use where we're connecting with people loosely to be able to do something in a large group that requires a lot of information or a small amount of altruism from lots of different people is something that we're able to do much better now than we used to be able to. So think about the networks of people who gather around a page on Wikipedia. Right? So Sarah Palin, her Wikipedia page got about 1,000 edits a day during the election last year. And so you might think from hearing that, well, there's going to be a lot of untrue stuff on the Sarah Palin page from both the left and the right. But in fact, if you went in and looked at it at any one time, it was actually not bad. It was actually a pretty close, truthful account of what had been reported in other sources. Because there are people who volunteer to police these Wikipedia pages to make sure that they don't represent a biased point of view.
So a hit and an edit are 2 different things on Wikipedia. I don't even know.
Well, people that no
an
one
edit means
assigns.
they're adding something in.
That's right. So if you edit, anyone can edit
You
it,
can
right?
go in there and
That's right.
edit it.
Anyone can edit. And what
Very
happens?
strange.
And you get these spontaneous networks that emerge around these different topics, where people voluntarily make sure that the entry is saying something that's true. And in fact, there was a study in Nature a couple of years ago that showed that the average number of mistakes in a Wikipedia article is not significantly different from the average number of mistakes in the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Oh my God.
And no one's getting paid at Wikipedia. Right, this is all voluntary contributions of hundreds of thousands of people.
So, is all this networking good for us? I mean, is it getting on Facebook and Wikipedia and Twitter? Because I see my home phone never rings anymore. It all comes across as texting. I mean, I feel like we're losing touch with people with all this. I mean, you sort of get a general feel, and I'm connecting with high school people I really don't even want to see anymore on Facebook, but I feel that we're actually losing touch. What do you think about that?
Right, so Barry Wellman is this scientist at the University of Toronto who has studied social networks for years, long before Facebook came along. And he had this series of studies, I think it was in the late 1980s, when there was a community that got high-speed access for the first time. I guess it's the early 90s, not the 80s. It's called NetBill. And they studied what happened to their pre-existing social relationships during this transition. So before, when they got the high-speed access, and after. And the main message from that study was that the online interactions were not a substitute for real-world interactions, they were a complement. So people were having coffee with each other more often, they were showing up at people's houses more often, because the exchange of information, the beneficial effect of being able to coordinate times to meet in real life was it outweighed the negative effect of spending more time online.
And having to find the phone number.
Yeah.
And, that's interesting.
That's right, yeah. And so I do think that there are some people, they become addicted to the internet and they live in Second Life, for example, and it may not be so good for them. But on average, it seems to be just another way for us to exhibit our natural human tendency to connect.
So, James, what about building networks for positive social change? And what advice would you have to make those things happen?
So Brian Uzi, this is something else we talk about in the book. He's this sociologist at Northwestern. He has actually studied creativity and what kinds of social organization best promote creativity. And so he looked at Broadway musicals and over a very long period of time, and the people who created those, and then how those teams were sort of intermingling with one another to create new musicals later on. So you could have a group of people that created a hit, and if that same group of people tried to create another musical, they didn't do so well. Or you could have a group of people who created this hit, another group of people who created this hit, another group of people who created this hit, and one person from each one of those groups who didn't know each other, you put them in a group, so, you know, like this is like the dream team, right? Like pick one of these people from each one of these people have been successful before, and put them on a team. They didn't know each other before, but they all had come from successful plays, and have them create a new play, they didn't do so well either. And in fact, the people who the people who did the best, the teams that did the best, were a combination of people who had worked with one another before, so they had some dense interconnections with one another, and new people. And the reason why is the densely interconnected group, they all knew each other, they trusted one another, they worked well with one another, but they weren't getting any new ideas. The unconnected group had all these great new ideas, but they didn't trust each other, they weren't able to work together. It's this sweet spot, this Goldilocks point in the structure of the social network that allowed us to promote the best creativity. And so I think in terms of being able to structure networks for social change, we should take a lesson from this, that there's a sweet spot where we're going to be able to get the most in terms of this balance between trust and new information.
Now, would the same kind of thing apply within families over time, over generations, that as you go from one generation to another, that learned behavior or the relationship behavior affects the family?
Yeah, so in our studies, we don't just look at friends. We also look at spouses, we look at siblings, look at neighbors, we look at coworkers. And so, in general, what we find is that behaviors spread only through deep, close social contexts. And the remarkable thing is that the behaviors, this is things like weight gain, like whether or not you smoke, whether or not you drink too much, those things actually spread from person to person, even if you live hundreds of miles apart. So your friend who lives 1,000 miles away has just as much impact on you as your friend who lives next door.
Really?
And the reason why is because it's not the case that you're getting this by going out to eat with this person every night or going to the bar.
You know, that kind of thing.
You're getting ideas from them about what appropriate behavior is. Right? So your friend who lives in New York, right? So this is someone you might only see once a year, but if they've gained 15 pounds, you notice. If they started running and they feel great, they're going to tell you about it, and you might consider doing the same thing yourself.
True. That's really a good point.
But when it comes to affective states, like emotions, like happiness and depression and loneliness, then distance really takes a bite. And so what we found was that these need to be friends who live nearby, these need to be family members, and in some cases, even next-door neighbors can have an effect on you because you see them every day. And this repeated interaction with them, their emotions can rub off on you. And so we look at all these natural social networks. We talk about some of this research that we've done in the Framingham Heart Study, looking at 5,000 people over 30 years. We also talk about all this really great research that other people have done, some of which is sort of counterintuitive in terms of what we learned from what they've written. And what we really want to do is we want to show that these natural social networks have been with us for such a long time that they're actually something that we ought to think of in evolutionary terms. That evolution actually acted on our social networks the same way it acted on everything else about us. And so our brains, for example, are built for social networks. Our genes actually have an impact on whether or not we'll be at the center of the network or whether or not we'll be at the periphery. Will you be the life of the party or will you be a wallflower? And as a consequence of these natural social networks, we need to think very differently about Facebook and Twitter. Yes, we do have one chapter on social networking. This new hyper-connected world, it's not going to be the case that all of these hundreds of people that we're connected to on Facebook are going to be equally influential. It's still going to be these close, deep social contacts that we're able to utilize online that are going to be most influential. And so that's the basic structure of the book, and at the end we really want people to think about what this all means. When I tell you that your friend's friend's friend gains weight means that you're more likely to gain weight, you might get really depressed. And you might start recommending that all of your friends and your friends' friends eat salads and order water for their dinner. It's just like in a comic strip in Kathy that I really liked. It came out after our obesity study came out. And so you might get really depressed and think that really the message here is that you have no free will, that you're just like a cell in the human body. And we want to tell you that that's not the case. That if it's the case that these dozens, and in some cases hundreds of people who have an influence on you can affect you by everything that they do that spreads from person to person to person, it's also true that you have an influence on those people. And so if you think for just a moment, you tell someone that they don't influence anybody, and I don't think that they're going to take as much responsibility for their own behavior as if you tell them that they're affecting the people that they love and care about, and the people that they love and care about, and the people that they love and care about. These 1,000 people that we're connected to that are influenced by what we do every day are what we should be thinking about when we're trying to change our own behaviors. And so, really, the point of this book is that for a long time we've been thinking about ourselves as though we were Robinson Crusoe, on the island by ourselves, trying to strike it out alone. But in fact, to understand human nature, what we first must understand is how and why we are connected. Thank you guys very much. And I'm very, very happy to sign books for you. Once you get your books, come talk to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the book. Thank you guys for coming. Votes in Florida. Right. What would have happened if any one of those voters had stayed home instead? How would the outcome have changed?
One of the votes?
If any one of them had stayed home, just one, how would the outcome have changed?
Mathematically, it wouldn't have changed.
It would not have changed.
Right.
So the question is, all these people are facing this choice. Go to the polls, and nothing happens.
Okay.
Stay home and nothing happens.
Okay.
So why would you invest that time in going to the polls? Why would you spend that time voting?
Which is what the next Republican candidates in the governorship of California are going to struggle with, because they stayed home.
That's exactly right. And so we've struggled with this problem in political science for decades, right? But a lot of the research on these problems thought about the decision as though it was just one person making a decision by themselves, not making a decision about how my actions influence other people. And so some of the research that we've done have shown that one person voting can set off a voting cascade and get dozens of other people to vote.
Okay.
Right, so when you're making the decision, it's not just you staying home, but potentially it's dozens, in some cases hundreds of these other people. So they're talking about exactly the same problem that James is. You guys are thinking about the same problem. And so he introduced us. The beginning of our story is a social network story. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and we worked together for 7 years developing this data in Birmingham Heart Study, where we studied things like the spread of obesity in networks, the spread of happiness in networks, the spread of drinking behavior, loneliness, depression, smoking behavior, altruism. We talk about all these things in the book.
So with the spread of networks, and now obviously the online networks, you've got things that people just want to be connected to other people. Like you take a LinkedIn where there are, you talked before about people being of influence. I mean, how do you differentiate between just knowing thousands of people versus knowing the 30 that really matter?
Right, so when we've now taken our studies online, we talk a little bit about this in the book, and what we do is we differentiate people in terms of whether they're a Facebook friend, just someone I'm connected to on Facebook, or a picture friend. And a picture friend is someone that you upload a photo of and tag.
Okay.
Right, and so if you've done that, the chances are you're in the same place at the same time at some point, and that person cares enough about you to do this, where they aren't doing it with their hundreds of Facebook friends.
Okay.
The average number of picture friends a person has on Facebook is about 5 or 6, which is very close to the 5 or 6 close friends and family members that we have in real life.
I might as well mix Mexican with
The spread of tastes,
And that's like a
multicultural.
garlic chili sauce, I think.
Oh wow!
or a musical artist. If you look at the spread through Facebook friends, we don't find any evidence for social contagion. But if you look through picture friends, we find lots of evidence for social contagion. That if you liked a certain movie, that your friend will like it, and that your friend's friend will like it as well. It suggests that Ashton Kutcher ought to be the most powerful person in the world. And I bet you he hasn't convinced very many people to do much of anything other than follow him on Twitter.
So I mean, because his argument obviously like that the shoes is people will just follow cool people and will follow it. But you're saying no, they need to know them very well to be able to do that.
Yes, to change behavior. Now you can spread.
But is
emotions.
behavior wearing the same pair of shoes as somebody else?
That's behavior. That's behavior. Yeah.
Okay.
And so our results suggest that for a lot of these different behaviors, to actually make a change, do something different, that you have to get that by changing your ideas about what's acceptable. And you don't change your ideas about what's acceptable by seeing some random person on the train. You get those ideas from people that you went to college with, people, your close friends, your army buddies, your spouse, your sibling. It's not going to be these hipsters that you kind of know about, but you don't know.
Did you read the Freakonomics book?
I did, and they've got another one coming out, Super Freakonomics.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
that was terrific.
Yeah.
So I mean, like some of the, the paradoxes. Why do drug dealers live with their mothers?
Right. Yeah. So Dubner, he's a writer of the New York Times, and also Malcolm Gladwell, he's a reporter. So we've got the science down, and what we've had to learn is how to write like journalists.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've made a good step in that direction. I'll let you be the judge as to how successful we're, but we had to do things like bring in these stories to illustrate a point. So we've got this great Sicilian murder cascade right at the beginning of the book that we talk about, and there's a story about Survivor to demonstrate how groups change their network structure. We talk about football teams and how they change their linebackers, right, in order to create different networks to compete against each other. So this is something that we've really had to work on as writers when we're writing the book.
Yeah.
Is this for you, Tom? Or?
Yeah, it's for me. Yeah.